The morning sunlight filtered through the blinds, painting golden stripes across the wooden floor of our living room. I sipped my coffee, trying to shake the uneasy feeling that had settled in my chest. It was one of those quiet mornings where everything seemed normal, yet nothing felt right. The city outside hummed with its usual rhythm, cars rushing, people walking, a world going on oblivious to the storm quietly brewing in my own life. I had tried calling Lena, my wife, early that morning, but the phone went straight to voicemail. She was always reachable. Always. Something about that unsettled me more than I wanted to admit. My thoughts wandered to the past few weeks, the subtle changes, the late nights at work she never explained, the hushed phone conversations I could hear but not understand. I had brushed them off, telling myself it was just the stress of her demanding job. But now, as I stared at her empty voicemail greeting, my unease deepened. I decided, on a whim, to surprise her at the office. I had picked up flowers and a small lunch, imagining the smile that would light up her face. It seemed like such a simple thing, an ordinary gesture to show love in a life otherwise consumed by schedules and responsibilities. I parked my car in front of the building and stared at its sleek glass facade. Something about the lobby struck me immediately. It was unnervingly silent. No chatter, no hum of printers, no receptionist greeting visitors. Just a hollow, echoing emptiness that made the hairs on my neck stand on end. I pressed the elevator button, my pulse quickening with each passing second. As the doors slid open, I stepped inside, the quiet of the building pressing in around me like a physical weight. When I reached her floor, the office was in disarray. Papers were scattered across desks, chairs were toppled, and the lights flickered ominously. "Lena?" I called, my voice trembling. The echo mocked me, bouncing back with a hollow emptiness that made my stomach churn. Then I noticed it, a small, almost invisible panel in the corner of the office wall, slightly ajar. A faint sound reached my ears, barely audible, a soft whimper that made my heart stop. My hand shook as I pushed the panel, and behind it, in the shadowy darkness, I saw her, Mia, my little girl, huddled and trembling, her eyes wide with fear. Relief crashed over me, but it was immediately replaced by terror and confusion. How had she ended up here? Why was she hidden away? I pulled her into my arms, feeling the fragility of her tiny body against mine. "Daddy's here." "You're safe now," I whispered, though the fear in my own voice betrayed the storm inside me. And then she whispered something that froze me in place. "Mommy did it." In that moment, the world I thought I knew shattered. The ordinary day I had begun with so much hope had turned into a nightmare of betrayal, fear, and unanswered questions. And yet, beneath the fear, a quiet fire of determination ignited. Whoever had done this would not escape justice, not while I was still standing, not while I held Mia in my arms. The drive home was tense and silent, broken only by Mia's soft whimpers. I kept one hand on the steering wheel, the other gently stroking her hair, trying to convey safety through touch. Her small fingers clutched my shirt, as though holding on to me was the only anchor in a world suddenly turned upside down. I tried to make sense of it all, but the pieces refused to fit together. My wife, Lena, someone I had loved, trusted, shared a life with, how could she be capable of such cruelty? At home, I set Mia down on the couch and sank into the armchair opposite her. She curled into herself, trembling, her eyes wide as if the shadows of fear still clung to her. I took a deep breath, bracing myself. The confrontation with Lena was inevitable. I had to know why, and more importantly, I had to understand how deep the betrayal went. When she walked in, the ease with which she smiled at me felt unnatural. It was a facade, a mask carefully maintained. I called her out immediately, my voice steady despite the storm of emotion inside me. "Where is Mia? Why was she in your office hidden behind that wall?" Her expression didn't falter. She didn't hesitate. She looked at me as though she had expected this moment all along. "You wouldn't understand," she said softly, her tone calm, almost chilling. "She was in the way. Always in the way." The words hit me like a knife. Every ounce of disbelief, every memory of shared moments, every smile we had exchanged, all of it seemed to crumble in that instant. My heart raced, my mind spinning. I could feel the betrayal radiating from her like a cold wind, seeping into every corner of the room. I sank to my knees beside Mia, holding her tight as she hid her face against my chest. "She's just a child," I whispered, more to myself than to anyone else. "A child doesn't deserve this." The realization was bitter. Lena had planned this. Months of secrecy, lies, and manipulation had culminated in this one act. The late nights, the secretive phone calls, the unexplained absences, they weren't stress. They weren't work. They were preparation. She had built a web of deceit so carefully that I hadn't even noticed it forming. As the day wore on, I became acutely aware of the new fire igniting within me. It wasn't just fear or heartbreak, it was a fierce, protective determination. I wouldn't let her control Mia or me anymore. I wouldn't let her get away with what she had done. My mind began to map out every step I would take, every action to ensure justice, every method to expose the truth. Mia, despite her fear, began to cling to me more, whispering fragments of what had happened behind the wall. Each revelation strengthened my resolve. Love for my daughter became my armor, her trust became my mission. And deep down, beneath the anger and the shock, a plan began to form, a careful, calculated path to uncovering every lie and making sure the betrayal didn't remain hidden. That night, as Mia slept finally in her bed, I stared at the ceiling, heart pounding, mind racing. The betrayal was no longer just about deception, it was personal. It was intimate. And the path ahead, though fraught with danger, was clear. I would protect my daughter, reclaim our lives, and ensure that the truth would surface, no matter the cost. The days that followed were a blur of meticulous planning. Every detail mattered, every action had a purpose. I realized that revenge wasn't about anger or violence, it was about exposing the truth, about dismantling the carefully constructed world Lena had created to hide her betrayal. I had to be smart. One wrong move, and she could slip away, taking Mia's innocence and trust with her. I began by quietly gathering evidence. Security camera footage from her office, digital records, and emails, all the things she thought she had erased or hidden, were slowly surfacing under my watchful eye. I reached out to colleagues and friends she had manipulated, learning how she had twisted reality to her favor. Piece by piece, the puzzle came together, revealing a shocking depth of deceit. She had allies, people willing to turn a blind eye, people who had unwittingly helped her hide the truth. But even they could not escape scrutiny forever. Each night, I sat with Mia, showing her that she was safe. Her trust in me became my anchor. Together, we rebuilt routines, small joys, and moments of laughter that had seemed impossible. Watching her smile again ignited a quiet determination within me. This wasn't just revenge, it was restoration. I would restore our lives, piece by piece, and ensure that the woman who had shattered them faced the consequences. Orchestrated the first part of my plan carefully. A reconciliation meeting at her office, disguised as an attempt to mend the fractured relationship. She walked in confident, smug, her eyes glinting with the expectation of control. But she had no idea what awaited her. Step by step, I revealed the truth. Emails she had deleted, recordings of conversations, testimonies from witnesses, everything she had relied upon to maintain her facade came crashing down. The calm she had worn so confidently began to crack. Her lips quivered, her composure faltered, and for the first time, fear replaced her arrogance. The most powerful moment came when Mia, holding my hand, spoke the words that shattered the last barrier of Lena's facade. "You hurt us. You lied. But we're safe now." Her small voice echoed in the room, shaking the walls with truth. It wasn't angry or vengeful, it was honest, clear, and undeniable. The very innocence she had tried to manipulate became the instrument of justice. Lena's gaze shifted between the two of us, disbelief giving way to rage, then despair. I felt no joy in her downfall, only the quiet satisfaction that justice had finally been served. The world she had tried to control with lies and manipulation had been stripped bare. In that moment, I realized the sweetest revenge is not in punishment but in exposure. It is in reclaiming what was taken, protecting the vulnerable, and restoring balance. Mia's trust, her safety, and her happiness became the ultimate victory. The betrayal had been deep, but love, courage, and truth were deeper. From that day on, the house we shared with Mia became a sanctuary, a fortress built on honesty and trust. And though the shadows of betrayal lingered, they no longer held power over us. For the first time in weeks, I felt the weight lift from my chest. The storm had passed, but the bond we had forged in its aftermath was unbreakable. Weeks passed after the confrontation, and life slowly began to settle into a fragile, cautious normalcy. Lena's world had crumbled under the weight of truth. She faced the consequences of her actions, legally and socially. Friends and colleagues who had once admired her cunning now saw the reality of her choices. It wasn't violence or vengeance that brought her down, it was exposure, honesty, and the courage to confront betrayal. On.at home, Mia began to bloom again. Every smile, every laugh, was a small triumph, a sign that the darkness she had endured was finally giving way to light. I watched her carefully, noting how she began to trust again, first in small ways, holding my hand without fear, confiding minor worries, and then in larger, more profound ways. She was learning that the world could be safe again, and that her father's love was a constant shield she could rely on. Even I had to relearn trust. The betrayal had left scars, invisible but deep. Nights were the hardest. I would lie awake, the memory of her cries and the image of the hidden wall haunting me. Yet over time, the anger began to soften, replaced by a quiet resolve. My mission had never been about punishment, it had been about protection, about reclaiming what was ours. And in that, I found my own healing. We rebuilt our lives like careful gardeners tending to delicate blooms. Daily routines, once ordinary, became anchors for us: homework, bedtime stories, small dinners, walks in the park. Each shared moment was a brick in a fortress of safety and trust. Every laugh from Mia was a reminder that even after betrayal, life could be joyful again. I also learned to forgive in my own way, not Lena, but myself, for the moments I had ignored the warning signs, for the times I had assumed the world was as it seemed. Healing was not just for Mia, it was for me too. We couldn't undo the past, but we could control the present and build a future where her shadow no longer loomed over us. The hidden wall that had concealed my daughter became a symbol of resilience, not fear. Behind it had been darkness, deception, and pain, but from that darkness emerged strength, courage, and unbreakable bonds. Every time I looked at Mia, laughing and free, I felt the quiet pride of a father who had fought not with fists, but with love and determination. In the months that followed, life continued with careful joy. Mia thrived at school, developed friendships, and rediscovered her innocence. I became more present, more attentive, ensuring that the trust we rebuilt remained unshakable. And though the memory of betrayal never completely faded, it became a reminder of our strength, a testament to our survival. As I watched Mia play under the sunlight, carefree and radiant, I realized that true revenge had already been achieved, not in harming the one who betrayed us, but in reclaiming our lives, our happiness, and our bond. Love had endured, and justice had been served quietly but irrevocably. In the end, we emerged stronger, closer, and ready to face a future where shadows could no longer touch us.